Valorant's new map, Pearl, has been out for a little while now, and it's going to be hitting the comp queue in just over a week. So I figured it'd be time to talk about how to play controllers on the map and what your best bet is going to be. Now, based on the YouTube polls I've been doing, a lot of you haven't even played the map yet, and as it enters comp, it will be important to learn it, and having a controller is almost always important. And as someone who loves playing controllers, whether they're Astra, Viper, or whatever, I want to talk about what I'm going to be doing in comp to make sure that I'm winning the most games that I can. And this one is not too dissimilar to some of the previous maps like Breeze and Icebox, where I think it will be very heavily Viper dominated. And that's just kind of how the map is laid out. B is super long, A has lots of different, angles that can be walled off with a single wall. But I think this will be a map that will really benefit from double controllers, and that's because there's a lot of 3-place angles, where your wall can cover 2, but then there's a third angle that's really awkward to cover. So for example, let's take a look at B. This wall is great. It's covering a lot of the different sightlines, but Heaven is still very much exposed. Yes, you could put a Viper smoke there, but it's incredibly difficult to get something there with a lineup. So it'd be much easier to have something like an Astra or an Omen who can fill in that smoke. In addition, mid control is super important to this map, and so being able to split your smokes on offense between mid and a different site by having 2 different controllers will be huge. So overall, I feel like this is just going to be a map that really caters towards double controllers. And unlike maps like Fracture and Bind that don't have true mids where one controller can really control where most of your team is, being able to split out that util is huge. And obviously, Viper also just works really well. So that's what this next portion of the video is going to be, is I'm going to be showing you some really awesome ways that you can use Viper's wall, and a lot of these are assisted by a secondary smoke. So you'll see in the video, I will put down a Viper orb there, but typically that's very difficult to get an orb into that position, and so something like an Astra or Omen is recommended. So let's start with A site. Now this wall is pretty simple, but it's going to cover 2 main angles, flowers and the path from mid. Now what's really important about this wall is that it does have a little bit of a weakness in the fact that if you are split pushing mid and A, you are walling off your own team. And that is where Viper does run into a little bit of an issue. If you are actively taking mid and a site every round, a lot of the walls will block off that mid angle. Now, oftentimes this isn't a huge deal and can actually help out the person pushing mid by making it so they don't have to clear as many angles as quickly. It is something to be aware of, that if you are actively taking mid control, you may want to instead focus your wall elsewhere, maybe something like mid. But if your team is wanting to do just a full A push, this wall is great. And as you can see, this assist smoke here will help by blocking off all the major angles while still giving you full site control. You can also use that assist smoke to sneak around into dugout, which is some very powerful positioning, as if you are playing Astra or Viper, you can play from that spot with either Mollies or Astra Sucks. Speaking of Astra Sucks, there's actually a cool little play. You can put a star on the bomb, suck them off the bomb, and then wallbang through that little wall. I've done this a couple times. It's not a perfect strategy. I wouldn't fully rely on it, but it is something a little cheesy you can do. And also, if you're wanting something that's very consistent to get a molly onto default from that dugout position as Viper, you can really pretty much do this molly. Stand in the very corner, aim at that little line, shoot your molly, it'll bounce off the wall and land almost perfectly on default. And it works almost perfectly with the wall and the smoke, giving you a lot of control of A and giving you a couple different positions to play post plant from. Now, looking at B, I think this is where Viper becomes way more obviously a good pick. So let's take a look at that. All right, so basically you just shoot your wall straight this way so that the wall lines up with the end of the Heaven stick out. And so what that'll do, it'll bring the wall up, which does provide a little bit of cover, but again, within a support smoke, either Viper's smoke or preferably an Astra or Omen smoke, you can pretty much block off that entire half, forcing them to play in very, very open spots. I mean, when you look at this wall and smoke combo, there are very few places that they can play, and so you can very easily flush it out. Especially if you combine this with something like a Fade, Eye or Sova util, you can really easily just make sure all of sight is clear, and it's very hard for them to push on. And the big thing is, if you can get enough sight control, you can actually plant in the further away spot right here. And in this spot, it's really easy to defend. You can play from, backside. You can play from all the way at the end of the really long angle. There are so many really awesome places you can play. And so being able to lock it down with Viper is huge. Now, I think one of Viper's biggest weaknesses on this map is mid. Her wall doesn't do much on either attack or defense, and so I find generally that it's just not that useful, and I'd rather have an Astra or an Omen. You know, it just lets you smoke off the angles, kind of like normal chokes, and overall, I feel like it ends up being a better experience. So even if you are being a solo controller, there is definitely an argument to be made about a character like Omen or Brim. I think actually Brim being a solo controller could be pretty good on the map. You can still cover the 3 main places on A. B can still smoke off a lot of those angles. I feel like it just provides a little bit less flexibility than having that double controller setup. And so overall, I think double controller will be the way. And I think if you're going to have to pick one controller, Brimstone is actually a pretty good one you consider. But I also think Viper, with a little bit of lineup tech, can do the work of 2 controllers on this map. You know, not as easily, but still can be done. Either way, I hope you guys have found this video to be useful. Has a couple lineups, couple setups, talks about what I think will work the best in terms of controllers. I want to know all your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Do you disagree? Do you agree? I'm really curious. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.